Good morning, and thank you all for being here. This is a incredible day for us, one that's been a long time coming. I was in the car on the way over here. I thought of two quotes, two sayings. One, when we were kids, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And the extent to which all of our lives, we've all learned that that's not all that true. The other saying is, the pen is mightier than the sword. That statement, recognize that words can hurt. Words can create generational harm, and they have forever in our community and across our country. This is about addressing those harms and righting those wrongs. I'm Mayor Melvin Carter. I'm the Mayor of St. Paul. I am pleased to be here today with Maria Cisneros from the Just Deeds Coalition, with City Attorney Lindsay Olson, with President and Dean of Mitchell Hamlin, Anthony Nedwicki, and also the Director of the Center for the Study of Black Life and the Law, Dr. Anansi Wilson. We're also here with Makia Griffin, the Executive Director of the Rondo Community Land Trust, whose building was the first covenant we discharged through this work. Every day, we talk to St. Paul residents about our vision of a city that works for all of us, a city where all are welcome, a city where when people move to our community from another city, from another state, from another country, they're not moving into our community. They're moving into their community, because this is a community where we all belong and we all engage together. The challenge is when those neighbors buy a home, when those neighbors locate in this space, too many of them find themselves in places or considering going into spaces where the words on the deed of the property explicitly says, you are not welcome here. That flies in the face of every single thing that we're trying to do in St. Paul. And it's not just about who's welcome and who can feel welcome. It's about economic development. We hear it all the time, that home ownership is still the primary vehicle for wealth creation in our country. Well, let me tell you this. When we talk about equity in St. Paul, we're very intentional about knowing what we mean. Quite often, we hear the word equity thrown around by folks who aren't always, sometimes that concept can be somewhat amorphous. When we use it in St. Paul, we like to think of it not so much as a social justice word, but more so as an economic word. When my business school dean said the word equity, she was talking about money. Equity is a money word. It's about decision-making power. It's about ownership, and it's about a shared economy. If I own equity in a company and that company has a good quarter, then I have a good quarter too. And so our work in St. Paul is all centered around ensuring equity, ensuring that people can have access to ownership of assets that they can transfer to their children, that people can know that they are decision makers in this community, and that as our skyline grows and our tax base expands, that somebody can just have a little easier time feeding their children. This work today is centered in literally all of that. By eliminating the language, those restrictive covenants, by pulling them out of the language, not just saying that we're not going to enforce them anymore, but they're still going to be in the documents. But by saying we're going to eliminate that language, we're going to move it out, we're going to erase it completely, that means we're building a new legacy in our community. That means we're building a legacy of fairness. That means we're building a legacy of justice. That means we really are building a legacy of equity. You all have heard me complain about the fact that this office does not come with a magic wand, that in order to do big things in our community, it requires big groups of people. And I'm pleased to stand here today with our team where this work is concerned, who's helping us to make this work that we just described a real reality in our city. And so I'm going to get out of the way and ask for our team to speak to us because this is critical work. But suffice it to say, language matters, words matter. We can engage in restorative justice together. And this is an opportunity for us to fight historical wrongs. And as a wise man said on the video, put St. Paul on the right side of history. And with that, I'm going to pass the microphone to our city attorney, Lindsay Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Before I became the city attorney for St. Paul back in 2018, I ran across a book entitled Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. In this book, I learned about the legal specifics and despicable details of this nation's institutional racism and de jure segregation that intentionally injected into urban planning and zoning through law and policy of local and state and federal governments a variety of racial covenants and other institutional racism into land deeds that persist to this day. Talking with the mayor before we walked in, I'm reminded of the day that he and I met before he asked me to become the city attorney. And we talked a lot about the book, The New Jim Crow. And one of the things that led me to apply to be the city attorney and to determine this is my mayor, this is the city I want to work for, this is the work that I want to do, was this work. And I'm reminded of that again today because we literally have the same words without even talking to each other about it. And that synergy is what makes this work so powerful with the mayor, with this group. As the Mapping Prejudice website describes, racial covenants can be found in the property records of every American community, not just the Twin Cities. These restrictive clauses were inserted into property deeds to prevent people who are not white from buying and occupying land. Racial covenants serve as a legally enforceable contract in the past. They stipulated that property had to remain in the hands of white people, and they ran with the land. And that means they could be enforced in perpetuity. Anyone who dared to challenge this ban risked forfeiting their claim to the property. A survey of 30,000 covenants unearthed in Hennepin and Ramsey counties illuminates the wide variety of people that this targeted. While covenants no longer are legally enforceable, the language still exists in thousands of deeds in our community and in other communities around the country. We see the roots of this damage that these racist laws have created in urban housing issues, urban violence that we face today. Clearing these covenants is not an attempt to erase our history. As author Ibram X. Kendi explains, to know the past is to know the present. To know the present is to know yourself. The work is an opportunity to raise awareness of how our past affects our present and to work together for anti-racism in this present moment. When I first heard of the U of M's Mapping Prejudice efforts to map racial covenants in properties here in Minnesota, I knew the St. Paul City Attorney's Office needed to be part of this effort and assist property owners to clear these covenants consistent with our mission and the city's mission. In 2021, the City Council unanimously approved the City Attorney's Office to lead Just Deeds for the City of St. Paul. As we officially launch this work here today, my team and I are honored to be a part of leading this effort with these great partners, Just Deeds, Mitchell Hamlin, and Rondo Land Trust, among others. As lawyers, we have the duty to use our special skills, our knowledge, our training to advance equal justice, access to justice, fair housing, inclusion and equity, and a true welcoming community for all, not just in word, in deed. The pen is, in fact, mightier than the sword. I wrote that right here before you even said it. Yeah. So thank you for being here today, and I look forward to the work. I'm pleased to introduce my friend, Makia Griffin, the Executive Director for Rondo Land Trust.
Thank you. Wow. So first I want to thank the Mayor's Office, and I want to thank the St. Paul City Attorney's Office for really digging in and understanding the significance of erasing these harmful words and language and deeds across Ramsey County. I also want to thank all of you who have been part of this work as well. And we're just grateful. When I found out that the building that Rondo Community Land Trust, it's our new world headquarters, that's what I call it, had a racial covenant on it. It really getting the deed and reading the language that this particular property could not be leased or owned by a colored person. This building sits on Selby Avenue in the heart of historic Rondo. When I think about the fact that fair housing laws were not enacted until 1968, it is ironic that prior to that, 94 had come through and displaced so many, but that building was a building that our community could not utilize or use at that time. And, you know, that's disheartening and, like I said, a gut punch. There are literally no words that can describe, when you put those two together, what that means when you think about displacement and lack of access. The building actually had been foreclosed on, and Rondo Community Land Trust, though we support all of Ramsey County, we were born out of the Rondo community. What I'm grateful for is the fact that we get to hold this particular building into perpetuity. We will be here forever. And this land and this building will serve the Rondo community forever. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that we have such a wonderful partnership with the City of St. Paul. And it was fairly easy to actually get the deed discharged from the building. Like I said, I'm again, no words to describe what this truly, really means from a person of color who grew up in the Rondo community, who it's not lost on the fact that this building was not allowed for us in the community. So thank you. We're grateful for the City of St. Paul and the support of discharging this and helping us truly make the City of St. Paul a place where everyone can live, work, and play. Thank you. Oh, and up next is Maria.
Yeah, thank you. It's okay. I'm Maria Cisneros. I am one of the co-founders of the Just Deeds Coalition, and I'm so happy to be here representing the coalition. It is a coalition, and I feel lucky to be the one to be able to talk about this. We have a lot of other amazing leadership in the room from the Just Deeds Coalition today. And I'm honored to be able to welcome the City of St. Paul as the 21st city to join the Just Deeds Coalition. And the coalition is a community of stakeholders that are committed to acknowledging and addressing systemic racism in housing by helping property owners discharge racially restrictive covenants and by providing educational opportunities for communities to help acknowledge this racist history and to pursue reconciliation and anti-racist policy solutions. Our member organizations share responsibility for having created this situation. Cities pursued these policies, knew about them, and participated willingly and purposefully in creating racially restrictive covenants and imposing them on land. And so it's very powerful as a city to take this formal step to be able to join the coalition and acknowledge the role that the city played in creating racially restrictive covenants. And so we commend the City of St. Paul for taking that step. Beyond acknowledgement, joining the coalition is also a formal commitment by the city, and it's a commitment to provide educational opportunities for community members in the City of St. Paul and for staff to also come face to face with this legacy in a very personal way. And while racial covenants are no longer enforceable, they do still have a legacy that exists in the communities today and that we can see in the geography and the built environment of our cities.
Sometimes we get the question, why are we putting effort into discharging covenants if they're no longer legally enforceable? And so I just want to address that quickly. As somebody who has gone through the process of discharging a covenant on my own home, I've also helped a lot of other people discharge covenants on their homes. And discharging a covenant can be a very powerful act of resistance and repair. It's a tangible first step that any individual can take to place themselves in this history and to reclaim the space as an equitable and welcoming space, and to step into the power that each of us individually has to remedy the legacy of racially restrictive covenants. So we're excited to watch the City of St. Paul's participation in Just Deeds evolve, just like we've been watching all of the other Just Deeds communities. When communities join Just Deeds, we describe it as a build your own adventure. And that's because each community's process of discovering how to acknowledge and repair will be different based on what's happened in that community. And so I'll share just a couple of examples of what some of our other member cities have done. Richfield and Bloomington, their community path has involved making changes to their zoning code to allow more diverse housing options and combat some of the segregation that exists in their communities. Minneapolis, Shoreview, and Edina have hosted learning opportunities for community members. They've educated hundreds of community members in parks, at theaters, and farmers markets. And Wayzata, Golden Valley, and Hopkins, along with the Minnesota chapter of the American Planning Association, are planning some specialized training for planning commissioners and elected officials and city staff to identify and disrupt discriminatory zoning practices and implement transformative policy making. And of course, Just Deeds is more than just its city members. We also have the Minnesota Association of City Attorneys as a member, Mapping Prejudice, which has already been mentioned here today, Minneapolis Area Realtors, and Edina Realty Title. And they are also doing some really amazing work to disrupt the legacy of racial covenants. Mapping Prejudice continues to map covenants all across the metro area. They're also sharing their methodologies nationally and allowing cities across the United States to also tap into this history and understand how they can disrupt the legacy. The City Attorneys Association is engaging city attorneys in special learning opportunities through their Facing Forward series, which is a series of CLEs designed to teach city attorneys about how systemic racism shows up in your work as a city attorney. Our realtor partners, many of whom are here today, are really shining. They have created mentorship programs and scholarship opportunities to increase diverse participation in their profession. They've also developed training opportunities, the Racism in Real Estate CE program that they offered for all realtors in the state of Minnesota. And they've made changes to the Minnesota Purchase Agreement form to disclose the possibility of racial covenants in purchase agreements. And then finally, our Just Deeds leadership team has done hundreds of speaking engagements across the state. We talk to students, we talk to corporations, we talk to housing advocates, teaching professionals and anyone who will listen, basically, about this history and the personal responsibility that each of us shares to become involved and to support changes to combat the legacy of racial covenants. And so all of this is really great work. And we also know that there is a lot more work to do together. We are all active participants in what happens next, and we all have the power to create equitable access to resources and opportunities for all. And we know St. Paul is already doing a lot of that work, and we are so proud to be here supporting the City of St. Paul and welcoming you to the coalition. So thank you very much. And I will turn it over to Dean Nidwicki.
Well, good morning and welcome to Mitchell-Hamlin. I want to start out just by saying how proud we are that both city attorneys that are here today are graduates of our lovely law school. I'd like to think that what we taught them and instilled in them at their time at the law school is why they're here today to help us out. We have so many other students at the school that really come to law school to help address those areas of the law that are favor one party over another party. And we want to make sure we're giving those students that kind of experience because we know by knowing the law, they can go out and help make the law fairer and more just. For those that don't know, law students in Minnesota can actually be certified student attorneys, which allow them to practice law just like any other attorney under the supervision of a faculty member. In our case, our students will help the city and homeowners with the paperwork that's needed to discharge these covenants. This meets a really important goal of our school to equip students with the skills that they need to go out and practice law on the day that they graduate. Our students come to law school wanting to really bring positive change to the world and make great lasting change. And this project is just one of those examples of the type of work that our students really want to do. Also want to just recognize that we've been doing some of this work already through our curriculum, through the Mapping Prejudice Project, and doing some of this work in our curriculum. So this is just a continuation, and we're so glad to be partnering with the City of St. Paul. We're also grateful that Just Deeds was created with an attorney's eye towards helping homeowners access what is usually a very complicated process and make it easier. And so we're really just pleased that we're here today helping to make the law more accessible to those throughout the community, and we're honored to be hosting this event and working on this very important work. So thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wilson.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I would just like to take a moment to reflect on where we are. Maya Angelou once said that history, despite its wrenching pain, if faced with courage, need not be lived again. So 1857, on these very lands, we have Dred Scott enslaved, a time where Black lives are regulated, not just where they go or what they do, but the exact being and the ability to own one's own person and have one's own life as one's own. As our sister just told us, in 1968, we get the Fair Housing Act, the first time Black people are allowed a modicum of the ability or freedom to actually live and build wealth based upon the ways that Mayor Carter has told us before that is traditional in the United States through housing. 2020, we have the George Floyd tragedy here. And again, history, despite its wrenching pain, if faced with courage, cannot be unlived, but may not be faced again. So this leads us with another quote that Charles Hamilton Houston gives us. He says that a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. And I understand that not all of us are lawyers. So I like to give us a little remix. A human being is either a social engineer or they are a parasite on society. And so we think about ourselves now, and we are called to think about all of ourselves now, collectively, as a group of social engineers. Not just this coalition that is standing beside me and before me, but also those that have come before us in our ancestry line. Again, returning to Maya Angelou, when I walk into a room, I may stand as one, but I come as 10,000. What does it mean that we are finishing the legacy of freedom? That our collective ancestors from this space have mandated, have paid a blood price for. And so here at Mitchell-Hamlin, here at the Center for the Study of Black Life and the Law, we're not only interested in studying the ways in which the law orders and disorders Black living and dying, but we're also interested in thinking about the ways in which people across race, gender, class, nationality, and ethnicity come together to create an American dream that has not yet been born. Yeah. And so I'm happy to be a part of this coalition. I'm happy to help our students come to be a part of this coalition. And hopefully one day we might have another Mayor Carter coming from this institution. Turning it back to the mayor.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I can do anything after that. Other than open the floor for questions.
Can one of you talk about how this actually works, how people interact with the student attorneys and how the process works?
Yeah.
Do you want to do it? Yes, thanks for that question. I really appreciate that, because one of the things that we want people to take away from this, and I appreciate the press being here because we want people to know about this. We want landowners to go to the internet, to see your article, to say, do I have a covenant on my property? What can I do? And we have websites for the city of St. Paul. Each city in Just Deeds has its own website. Just Deeds has a website. Ramsey County has a website. You can go on that website if you're a property owner. You can click on a link to the Mapping Prejudice map of covenants, find your property. If you believe that it shows that you may have a covenant on your property, contact us. There's a form online. You just simply fill it out, and it comes in. It'll go to Ramsey County. It'll go to the city of St. Paul. We will review that. We'll pull the documents. We'll contact you. And our team, which will include the students, working with our attorneys and other attorneys here at the school, will work to change the language in that covenant if it exists on the property, and away we go. So that's how it's done.
I imagine that someone will ask if this costs anything or if there's
No,
a fee involved.
there's no fee. There's no fee. Yeah, Maria wants to say a few things too.
I want to add to the question about fees just to highlight some other support that we have from Hennepin and Ramsey counties. When the legislature passed the law in 2019 to allow the discharge of covenants, there was a recording fee that people would have to pay. And both Hennepin and Ramsey counties, in their partnership with Just Deeds, have waived all of those fees. And their county staff and the recorder's office and the examiner's offices have been very supportive and helpful of this work. And we really appreciate that from the counties. Thanks, Maria.
Do either of you have a sense of the scope of numbers of properties we're talking about, whether it be city number or county number? Like how many of these covenants are there? Just round figures.
I know there are over 30,000 in both counties, Hennepin and Ramsey. And there are thousands within St. Paul. St. Paul is the largest, of course, in the Ramsey County area, but there are also covenants that exist in the suburban Ramsey County cities as well.
Other questions?
Have all the properties in St. Paul been mapped? Do you know exactly who has covenants?
Yes, that's my understanding from the mapping prejudice folks at the U of M. I don't want to speak for their project, but I do know that they have a very thorough methodology that they've used to map the properties in the entire county, both in Ramsey and in Hennepin. You can.
Yeah, so you can go to mappingprejudice.org or justdeeds.org to look at the map. And on that map, you can type in specific property addresses to see if there's a covenant, or you can just kind of scroll around and see they're all mapped, or they're marked on the map. The Mapping Prejudice has gone through all of the records they had from Ramsey County, but they are continuing to map in Ramsey County, and some of our volunteers are finding pockets of covenants that didn't show up the first time. So sometimes if you hear of a place that you know by oral history had covenants, then you can certainly contact Just Deeds and bring that to our attention, and we can do the title research to make sure we haven't missed any.
In the words of City Attorney Olson, the pen is mightier than the sword. And we are excited for the opportunity to wield our pens as swords to fight for justice in St. Paul. Thank you all for being here today.